the talk is about the challenge of the week. No, it's not about the physical challenge. It's about the internal challenge of the week and how that relates to the question of the week. And the question of the week is, what's the difference between existing and living? And the challenge of the week is to stand up for something that you believe in, but not just like how you normally think of that, which is sometimes that just stays in our head. It is about like actually taking an action, and the space between what we think and what we do, or what we know we're supposed to do and what we actually do, sometimes can be quite a chasm in between those things. So as martial artists, this is part of what we're really trying to do, is to be able to take what we know we're supposed to do and actually just do it. Take what's important to us and actually take action to stand up for it rather than just thinking. And this is a huge part of our practice, because a lot of times it's like, I know I'm supposed to sidestep this punch, but I'm not actually doing it because I'm in my head second guessing. I'm thinking, but should I go this way or should I go this way? And then while you're sitting there thinking, you're getting punched. And isn't that just how life goes in general? You're thinking about, should I do this or should I do that? And then life just punches you. It's like Mr. Miyagi famously said in The Karate Kid, when Daniel was kind of waffling back and forth, am I going to do the tournament or not? I don't know. And Mr. Miyagi was like, walk on this side of road, okay. Walk on the other side of road, okay. Walk in the middle, squish like a grape. And we don't want to be second guessing or stuck in the middle. You want to make a choice and go with it, and then take your action. And then when that happens, in practice, sometimes you make the wrong choice and you still get punched. Well, at least you get to learn from that. What you can't learn from is inaction or second guessing. You have to do something and then see what happens. You throw something up and see if it works, and if it doesn't, then you go back and try something else. So I'm just going to keep going into this talk, and at some point we'll have Facebook on. So I want to talk about the difference between existing and living. And I think I've talked about this in a different kind of way before, where I talk about like living, being a human being versus a human doing. And when I talk about it that way, it's kind of like what we're trying to get at is a human being is somebody who's okay just like being in the present, versus a human doing, which is like, I feel like I'm always running around trying to get stuff done. And that's almost the opposite of what I was just talking about, which is the importance of action and being decisive and actually doing something. But this is another great way to look at it, because as a human being, if we just feel content with being in the present and being okay with being still in meditation, in those what could otherwise be awkward silences, then you're good. And there will be so many awkward silences in life. And if you are like most people, I think you're starting to drive in your car and you have 5 seconds of silence and you're like, I hate this. And you have to turn on the radio or listen to a podcast or get on the phone and call somebody, or terrible, start texting with somebody. You want to be able to just be in that silence, be in that stillness. And so a human being is able to do that. That is a different talk. Tonight's talk is about the difference between living, which has some elements of that, what it is to be a human being, and the difference between that and just existing. And sometimes just existing can really feel like I'm just a human doing, I'm just doing, and I'm just constantly like in that rut of action, or I am kind of stuck in the ways of being. And I wanted to talk about some of my own experience. Before martial arts, I felt very much like I was just existing. And what I said this morning in Tai Chi was I was like a zombie. I wasn't really alive. I was like undead. I had a body and I was moving around and just like go to school, go to work, watch TV, lots of TV, decent amount of school, not a lot of work at that point in my life before martial arts, but you've probably all had a similar experience to this. And maybe it's some days I feel like this and other days I feel like I'm really alive. But it definitely felt to me like more days than not, I was a zombie. And then when I started practicing martial arts, I had this really great experience of being more energized, really being in the present and really just being there for life rather than what it felt like to just basically be going through the motions. And that's a very distinct kind of feeling when you're really present. When you are younger than you guys are, and some of you are significantly younger than me, but you can remember probably when you were a kid, summer between school, it lasted forever. It seemed like an eternity. And of course, you were doing all kinds of interesting things that were unique and new to you. And that feeling starts to kind of disappear the older we get and the more experiences we have already had. The less novelty is left for us, right? So this is kind of like the difference between existing and living, because existing, we're just like, I feel like I've already done this before. This isn't interesting to me. This is not unique. And when we really start to live, we have a mindfulness practice, we have a meditation practice. What we're able to do is, even in those moments, and maybe this is really especially what we're trying to do with our mindfulness, is when it's something that we've done before, could be something we've done thousands of times, like a front punch. This is really at the heart of our practice, is when we recognize that I'm starting to feel this, I'm having to have this thought, I already know this, then I let that go and come back to the beginner's mindset and think like, I'm going to really sink my teeth into this and enjoy this thing that I've done thousands of times, right? So this is one of the things that our practice teaches us to do outside of our martial arts, is I'm doing this thing, I'm living this experience that I've had before, or something that I've had very similar to it. And I catch myself starting to slip into that feeling or thoughts, that mindset of, I already know what this is like. I don't really have to be present for us. And we kind of jog ourselves out of that and are just present, right? So this is like life after martial arts or during martial arts. I guess life after martial arts for me is going to be when I'm dead. But life during martial arts is, I feel like I'm really present and I have that beginner's mindset and it feels much more alive, right? When you're excited about the mundane, or you're excited about the things that, you know, maybe aren't on their face mundane, but might kind of have that feel to it some days, right? So this is living versus existing. The mindset is key, but also when we are really living, back to this idea of taking an action to stand up for what you believe in, like we're taking actual different actions, and we might actually be kind of going out on a limb or stepping out of our comfort zone and doing things that are just by their nature more exciting. So who's been skydiving before? Yes, it's the craziest thing. Why would anybody do this? I did it too, and I never would have done it without martial arts. And probably if I practiced martial arts a few years longer, I would have decided I don't need to do that. But that is the kind of thing that, like, if we're really living and not just living from fear or existing or acting from fear, you've never met somebody more afraid of heights than me. Well, that's probably not true, but I have a healthy innate fear of heights, and jumping out of an airplane is ridiculous. And yet I made myself do it. And look, I did it once, and I will probably never do it again. But it was it was a really incredible, unique experience that I will remember forever. I remember every second of falling. I remember things like the guy who, first of all, I did this tandem because I've never obviously going to jump out of an airplane by myself. I'm attached to a professional, and he's like, okay, we're going to go on 3, and we're right up there next to the door, and he's like, 1, 2, and just pushes, and we go, because he has this experience of when you say 3, then people hold on to the door and don't let go. So he's smart enough. That was fun. I remember this is the weirdest thing. You're falling and the air is rushing past your ears so fast that it sounds like there's a chainsaw going next to your head. It's like, and nobody ever told me that. And of course you can't wear earplugs because then you can't hear the instructions or the guy messing with you when he's counting to 3 and all of that stuff. So very unique. And you're falling for like a minute, but it feels like an hour, but then it also feels like a second. And it's a very cool kind of unique experience that I think most people will never have, and it's probably for the best. But this is part of my point, is to be able to take this kind of action and go out and do something that you might not normally want to do, feel comfortable doing. Anybody ever jumped in ice water before? I've never done this and I never will. It's crazy. And I'm sure you feel more awake and alive in that ice water than you ever have before, unless maybe you're falling from an airplane or something. But yes, you done it too? Snow? No, because you're wearing clothes, I assume. It's very different. But some people are like, I mean, for me, taking a cold shower is plenty. It's certainly cold enough. And you feel like literally energized when you do that stuff. This is another thing that you could consider, is waking up, cold shower, first thing in the morning. I hate it, but you can try it. The point just being that if we are living versus existing, existing can also be in a rut of actions, not just mindset. And so one of the most surefire ways to get yourself out of that rut is to just do something new. And it could be something as simple as I drive home a different way from what I'm used to. And that is new enough to bring me into the present and make me feel like I'm living. Lots of different ideas we could talk about with that, but that's enough. So standing up for something that you really believe in, taking an action to do that. This is something that takes some bravery, something that really is going to make you feel alive, and maybe you'll feel like this is not so comfortable. You can be doing something where the people around you are not really in agreement with you, and that is when it's the most important and the most difficult to stand up for something you believe in. That feeling of discomfort. Maybe you've gotten used to it with the other things that you're doing in practice or taking an ice bath or whatever it is. But there are few things, I think, that are more uncomfortable than having people around you, especially people that you care about and whose opinions you really value, being totally in disagreement with you and telling you that you're wrong, and you having to kind of stand up for it. And this is a really brave thing. Like, there are plenty of things going on in the world today, but always, this is not questions and answers. You save your questions for later. So there are plenty of things going on in the world that really need people to be standing up against them. And I won't go into the specifics of it, and I won't try to drag politics into this or current world events, but I mean, it's very clear. Like, the world needs more people who are willing to stand up for what they really believe is right. And sometimes you'll have people that absolutely, with the same amount of fervent belief and action, are standing up for polar opposite things, and that is just kind of the nature of humanity in the world, and it is necessary, right? Conflict, I would love to say, and I believe that we don't have to be killing each other, but conflict is a part of humanity, and it is a part of growth, and that friction is something that has to be there. And for us to grow in a situation where we're standing up for something we believe in, that growth comes from the conflict, and that growth comes from the feeling of discomfort and that friction that exists there. So you're entering into something that you know is going to be uncomfortable. Kind of be okay with that. Psych yourself up for it a little bit. Be happy with it. Uh, the last concept I want to talk about is from the Prophet. Some of you have read this book. It's one of the books that we have in the dojo. And while we're talking about living, we should also talk about dying. So this is one of the last chapters. So we would ask now of death. And he said, he being the prophet, said, you would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and sea are one. It's kind of like yin and yang, and there, of course, is no real experience of life without the knowledge of death. And this is something that can very much make us feel alive or bring us into this the reality of our existence, really. And I know when my mom passed, this is something that really was a major shift for me. And I hope that you guys don't have to lose somebody close to you to have this kind of experience. But when you really understand that you are mortal and you will die, and you lose somebody that really makes you start to think like, I better get to it, because my time here is finite. I want to make sure that I am actually living and doing the things that I want to do. And you can also read that as not wasting as much time doing the things that I don't want to do, or being in the state of mind that I don't want to be in. So in the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king, whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. He's talking a little bit about the afterlife here. Is your shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling, that he shall wear the mark of the king? This is getting quite biblical, but yet is he not more mindful of his tremblings? This is speaking to this idea. And you might even believe that there's life after death and you're going to have something else that you get to transition into. Great. Whether you believe that or not, definitely this is finite. And you can be in a state of, trembling about that, or you can just be mindful and present and okay of it. For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing, and when you have reached the mountain top, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then shall you truly dance. That's the end of that part of it. So I think that, of course, our relationship with death is going to have a big impact on the way that we live, and it should be that way. And if we're pretending that life, or if we're pretending that life is going to go on forever, or pretending that death is not going to come for us, of course, when it finally comes, you're going to be in a real bad way. But this is something that as martial artists we're really meant to be practicing. And they say that the samurai would practice dying daily. So you could say like the samurai were really in tune with this, partly necessarily because they were soldiers who at any moment of the day could face death like that. And if you are afraid of it because you haven't faced your own mortality, you're not going to be a very good soldier, right? But you also want to think of it in terms of, like, in meditation, we're practicing dying daily. We're practicing experiencing what is behind the darkness of closed eyes. We're practicing this experience of what is that different kind of state, or really what is the experience of nothingness. And then when we return back to our life after meditation, maybe you are just a little bit more present to it. The sweetness is a little bit more sweet, and the sour is a little bit more sour. And this is a huge part of our practice, is to, take the sour with the sweet, or the bitter with the sweet. So when you meditate, I don't necessarily want you to just sit there and meditate on death, although this is a way that you can meditate, is to really ponder your own mortality. Really, what it's more about is learning to be totally in the present, so that when we enter meditation, we are really present with life. Learn to be okay with the end, but use that as a kind of jumping off point or juxtaposition to really appreciate what life is in this present and whatever it has for us in the future. So when we sit to meditate, let's try to keep that in mind without being stuck. We're not talking about ruminating on death. Really, the opportunity here, and the opportunity that really is there for us when death is kind of growing nearer, drawing nearer, or the death of a loved one you might experience, is to really appreciate what we have now and to truly live. And if you've all heard this, if somebody told you you've got 1 year left to live, what are you going to do? You'd probably live differently than you would if you thought that you had 50 years left, or the way that we act is like we think we have forever. Well, what if somebody told you that this was your last day alive? You'd live even differently from that. And what if somebody said, this is, and this is somebody who you believe, by the way, not just some guy walking down the street. You know that this is your last breath. You're going to take your time with it and really experience it in a different way. And this can be a very powerful way of entering into your meditation. I like to think of this sometimes as like, this is my last meditation. Am I going to get everything that I can from it? Am I going to be totally present? And then sometimes within the meditation, if I recognize my mind wandering, I'll ask myself, what if this is my last breath right now? And it really invites us into the present in a new and exciting way. So let's practice that. Sit comfortable. Cool. Close eyes. Spine straight. Eyes upturned. Relax. Watch the breath. Let go of all thoughts, worries, and cares. Be here now.